Welcome to the Criminologist Podcast. Our goal here is to educate and enlighten our listeners, focusing on the latest and greatest evidence-based interventions to help individuals desist from a life of crime and delinquency. And not only those factors which drive folks into crime, we also look at the reasons why people exit a life of crime. Also, we attempt to paint an accurate picture of that journey from the perspective of the justice-involved individual. Too often, our perceptions of those involved in the system are tainted by media-driven caricatures created to sell newspapers or movie tickets. This adds little to a healthy dialogue as to how to best address criminality. This podcast will avoid stereotypes and biases. We will endeavor to accomplish the first two goals in a way that keep you, the listener, interested and even entertained. And now, the host of The Criminologist, Joseph Arvidsson.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Please be seated. And welcome to episode 43 of the Criminologist Podcast. Happy to have you all with us today. Getting it back to our fictitious caseload of clients today, we are going to be joined by our client, Henry Hill. Recall that Mr. Hill has been with us just once before. During our last visit, we did some agenda mapping with Henry. We looked at some targets of change around his treatment. Henry expressed an interest to find a closer location for him to attend treatment, which I told him I would look into. We are going to follow up on that today and also model some problem-solving techniques for you all. Now, if you are versed at all in any type of cognitive behavioral interventions, you are familiar with problem-solving techniques. We use problem-solving techniques in the world of cognitive behavioral interventions in conjunction with social skills and cognitive restructuring. There are a variety of problem-solving techniques in existence, different steps you can take, all very similar. In this episode, I am going to highlight the work I discovered recently in the Core Correctional Skills training kit, which my friend Dr. Durnescu from the University of Bucharest sent me. Much more on his Core Correctional Skills training kit on the other side of this interview. And with that, let's have a listen to my conversation with client Henry Hill, and I will see you all on the other side. Henry, how have you been?
I've got no complaints. You know what they say, every day above ground is a good one.
Yeah, I have heard that expression, Henry, and I always thought whoever coined that phrase was kind of setting the bar a little low. I mean, really? As long as you're breathing, that is your benchmark for success. But yeah, all about one's perspective. Am I right?
Ha ha. Yeah, I guess I never thought of it that way. I mean, I've got some friends who are locked up for a bit, and technically they're above ground, but I'm doing better than they are. So what's on the agenda for today, boss?
Well, I am so glad you asked, Henry. Recall last time you were here, we did in fact do some agenda setting. Remember, we did that agenda setting exercise, which I have right here in your file, but remind me what you recall from our last session, Henry.
Yeah, was that when you asked me what I wanted to talk about and then you filled in the pieces of that pie chart kind of looking deal?
Yep. Precisely. I think last time we began by focusing on your treatment and then looked at your employment situation. Those were two things you identified that were important to you.
Yeah, that was it. And you were going to call my treatment place to see if I could find somewhere closer to attend?
Yep, and I did make that call, and they do have a location on this side of the river, which I know was a preference for you. So that is good news. That being said, we still need to figure out a reliable way for you to attend those treatment sessions. I don't want you digging yourself deeper into a hole by driving on a revoked driver's license, Henry. So we need to noodle through that and come up with a solution which gets you closer to your goals rather than farther away from them.
What do you mean farther away?
Well, let me put it this way. Is it a goal of yours to be sober?
Yes.
Is it a goal of yours to be successful on probation?
If by successful you mean to complete it as soon as possible, and yes.
Now, if you get pulled over by the police for driving on a revoked license and all the nonsense that would come with that, missing treatment, probation violations, possible jail time, would that get you closer or farther away from your goal?
Well, when you put it that way, farther away.
Henry, would you be open to try some problem-solving techniques?
Problem-solving techniques, like what?
Well, there are actually steps I can teach you that with practice can help you move closer to your life goals and not farther away.
Sure, I'm up for whatever.
Outstanding. Let me start by repeating just a tad of what I've already referenced, and that is by defining exactly what we mean by problems. Let's face it, Henry, we all encounter problems all the time in our daily lives. And when you really think about it, we've been experiencing problems the whole time we've been on this planet Earth, from the time we're babies through our teens into adulthood. We've experienced problems. I like to define a problem as we have a goal, but the means to get there are not always obvious. In other words, the steps to take are not clear.
Okay. So far, so good.
Or some people may solve problems by avoiding them, which is not good in the long run. Can you think of an example, Henry, of when your problem-solving strategy would have maybe falling into that category, into the avoidance category?
You mean like maybe when I had a warrant out for my arrest and rather than turn myself in, I just hid out at my girlfriend's house for like 6 weeks?
Bingo. That is spot on. Rather than clear the warrant by reporting to the sheriff's department to turn yourself in, you chose to hide and avoid being arrested. Another problem-solving style which we frown on is when we resort to impulsiveness or carelessness. Again, this type of problem-solving involves lots of inaction or maybe being dependent on others or maybe taking incomplete or hurried approaches. Now, I'm going to provide you with some concrete steps to follow just here in a bit, Henry, which show you how to problem solve by being planful. But it's important to remember that we want to take the problem solving approach, which is planful and not avoidant or impulsive.
So don't avoid problems or be impulsive when solving them.
Correct, Henry. And the key to that is to be really aware of your emotions. Look, we all have different past experiences, and because of those past experiences, we all tend to act strongly to different events. Allow me to share a bit about myself, Henry. The sound of a baby crying makes me want to climb the walls. I can't explain it. It's my Achilles heel, though. In fact, I have a superpower, which is only been shared with a few individuals. I'll let you in on this. When I arrive at the airport, I can look around the boarding area of my flight, and if there's a baby on that plane, my superpowers guarantee that the child will be sitting right behind me on the plane.
Ouch. That is quite the cross to bear.
It's indescribable, Henry. Now, let me ask, what is your Achilles heel? What's your weakness? What is it in this world that gets your temperature to go to the boiling point in no time?
Well, honestly, for me, it's when someone tells me to do something, like, they give me an order.
Well, as your supervising agent, that is a good piece of information to have, Henry.
Well, not like that. I mean, not like when you and I talk and you tell me to do something. It never feels that way with you. It's more like we agree on things together. Almost like you get me to make the argument for myself. No, I mean, it's like when a guard or a boss at work barks orders at me, like I'm less than they are. That gets my blood boiling.
Sure. And when your blood gets boiling, when you feel the temperature going up, that is when you want to be aware and not leap to problem solving or decision-making mode. I'd like to double back to this later, but what we're talking about here is known as mindfulness. Mindfulness is a good way for folks to become aware of their emotional responses and also to control them.
Yeah, I've heard of that before, but it's never really been explained to me.
Oh, fantastic. Like I said, I can share some techniques with you around mindfulness, but in short, it's all about paying attention to what is happening around you. Get relaxed and focus on things like your breathing rather than your racing thoughts.
Okay, so if being impulsive and avoiding shit is now like we don't want to solve problems, then what's the secret sauce?
So glad you asked, Henry. So glad you asked. Okay, the strategy that I want to share is, well, it involves 5 steps. These are define the problem, generate alternatives, make a decision, do it, or you might say implement it, and review and evaluate. Okay, so let's just kind of walk through these one at a time now.
All right, so the problem is I have to go to treatment.
Yeah, that's good, Henry, but let's drill down just a bit more.
Well, I don't have a way to get to treatment.
Perfect. Now, sometimes I think it helps if we turn our problems into a goal. And here I think it's important, again, to really try to break the problems down into small parts that can be dealt with easier. There's an old expression, even the largest elephant can be eaten if it's divided into small pieces.
Now, why would you want to eat an elephant?
There's a story about a bird who moves an ocean from one place to the next using only its beak.
These are metaphors.
Yes, Henry, and not very good ones at that. The point being, sometimes a problem seems easier to handle if we can break them down into smaller parts. So, step 1 is to define the problem.
Well, I don't have a reliable way to get to treatment.
Yes, thanks for getting us back on track. Step 2 is generate alternatives. In other words, brainstorm. And when we brainstorm, everything is on the table. It's about quantity and not quality. In other words, the number of alternatives is what we're looking for, not how good they may be, at least at this point. No good or bad ideas, just ideas.
Like what? Like you mean different ways I could get to treatment?
Yeah, all the different ways to get that block out of the way between you and that goal of getting to treatment reliably.
Well, let's see. I could steal a car.
I know you're kidding, but in all seriousness, yeah, just start brainstorming and throwing things out.
Well, I could take an Uber. I could hitchhike. I could maybe ask my sister for a ride. I could see if anyone in the group that I go to, lives near me, maybe stuff like that.
Exactly. Stuff like that. Now let's take a look at all these suggestions and view them through the lens of how will others be affected by this choice? Will this hurt others or even hurt you, Henry?
Okay, let's see. I don't think I could afford to take an Uber every single time, so that would affect me in a bad way.
Okay, good. What else?
Well, I've heard you use the word reliable a few times, and that would be an issue if I were to be hitchhiking. And the weather is always a wild card with that option.
Good. You're getting the hang of this. Let's keep going. Next on your list was asking your sister for a ride.
Right. Well, I'm not always in the good graces, shall you say, with my big sister.
Say more about that.
Well, she has not necessarily approved of my lifestyle choices over the years. Since that, it has often meant her bailing me out of jail, taking me to court, that sort of thing. So not sure she would be too keen on being on the hook for taking me to treatment every week.
Duly noted. The last one was finding out if anyone in treatment lives near you and might be able to assist.
Yeah, well, with that one, I really don't know. I mean, I would have to get to treatment first, and then I could explore that option a bit more. But if I could find someone, that would be a good one as far as your thing about how it affects me or others.
Right, and that is a good point. That needs to be always kept in mind. Will this negatively affect others? Okay, so of these decisions, upon further review, as they say, what are your thoughts?
Well, on paper, probably asking my sister for help is looking like the best. But like I said, that comes with a lot of baggage.
Well, one other thing that we have in our tool belt are these things called social skills. Social skills are things we practice with clients to get better outcomes for them. Some are really basic things and other are a bit more extensive, but we could start with some of the basic ones in this situation. For example, we could practice the skill of asking for help or the skill of making an apology if you think an apology to your sister is in order. What are your thoughts with that?
Boy, honestly, probably both.
Well, perfect. Well, we can practice those here in a bit. First, let's finish our problem-solving exercise. So after the step of making a decision, we have implementation, or as I say, just do it. Nike swoosh. Having a solution is one thing. Putting it into place is another. Some folks get impatient or grow frustrated if their problem is not solved immediately. Just remember that problem solving takes time and effort. Maybe we start with what we call SMART goals. By that, I mean taking steps that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. I'd like you to start keeping that in mind when you're goal setting.
Nice acronym. So maybe walk me through an example of that.
Of course. So let's say I have a goal of I want to be rich and famous someday. Now let's run it through that acronym, as you said, and I'll ask you to be the judge, in fact. So I need your help here. I want to be rich and famous someday. Is that specific?
I guess.
Well, let's take a look at that. How specific is it to say I want to be rich and famous? Whose definition of rich? My rich and your rich might be two different things. That is, for somebody living below the poverty line, I might already be considered rich. And I can make that same argument for famous. Again, it's not really specific.
Okay, I get that one. What about the next one?
Measurable. The M stands for measurable. Is that measurable?
No, not really. Not based on what you just reminded me of what defines or who defines rich and famous.
What about the next one? Is it achievable?
I don't want to hurt your feelings, but probably not.
Feelings not hurt. Based on that, you'll probably say it's not a realistic goal either. And that just leaves timely.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by that one.
Well, with goals, we like to slap a fixed time frame on them, like get to treatment for the next 60 days or graduate from high school for some or attain 6 months of sobriety. So now let's look at your options. Could we, for example, set a goal of you speaking with your sister in the next 2 days to discuss ride options? And you tell me, does that fit our definition of a SMART goal, Henry?
Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Yeah, I think it is.
I believe so too. Good work, my man. Okay. Let me drag some index cards in here that I've got made up, and we can do some practice with those social skills that I mentioned around asking for a favor and making an apology. Sound good?
Sounds like a plan, Stan.
All right. Give me 1 second, Henry.
A quick break from the show to give a shout out to our friends at APHIS, the American Institute for the Advancement of Forensic Studies. APHIS is a professional organization dedicated to uniting the forensic communities of criminal justice, education, law, medicine, and psychology. APHIS is a leader in building relationships within the forensic community, locally and nationally. The mission of the American Institute for the Advancement of Forensic Studies is to provide quality education, training, consultation, and research in the forensic studies to professionals and students. APHIS is a leader in connecting members with one another to help facilitate professional growth, increase competency, and awareness in forensic mental health studies. For details as to upcoming training events, webinars, or publications, please visit them at www.aiafs.com. And now, back to the show.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back. Big thanks to my friend Scott Schmall for voicing the character of Henry Hill once again. Again, I drew heavily in that last session from Dr. Durnescu's Core Correctional Skills Training Kit. I will leave a link for you in the episode description of this show if you are interested in getting a copy for yourself or your agency. I highly encourage you to do so. I am a huge fan of comparative systems of justice, and this training kit provides great insight in that regard. Broadly speaking, this training kit looks at what is meant by effective skills, examining both the risk-need responsivity model and the desistance paradigm. If you are a loyal listener to this show, you know we constantly try to balance and highlight both of these approaches. And, as is pointed out in the book, R&R and desistance are the most influential and prevalent models of rehabilitation used in the correctional world at the end of the 20th century and beginning of the 21st century. The kit looks at the importance of the therapeutic alliance, particularly as it pertains to the involuntary client. It examines prosocial modeling and, of course, motivational interviewing. You heard us give a preview of its work around problem solving in this episode with our client Henry Hill, and I really just scratched the surface. Lots more on that important topic in the training kit. Finally, it looks at cognitive behavioral interventions. The book also contains plenty of case studies and examples of best practices, which I found really helpful. I cannot endorse the Core Correctional Skills Training Kit enough. Also, based on Dr. Durnescu's work, I am pleased to share with you information as to the International Training School on Core Correctional Skills. This will take place from July 12th to July 16th of 2021 in Barcelona, Spain. If you are a member of the Confederation of European Probation, you are likely aware of this training opportunity already. If you're not aware, I will also leave a link in the show notes of this episode to that conference. If you listen regularly to the show, you have heard me model the skill of role clarification all the time with my fictitious clients. Many of you know that this is based on the work of Chris Trotter. I bring this up in that Professor Trotter will be opening the course in Barcelona. So what an opportunity that would be to hear from Dr. Trotter and learn from him and many other great instructors. Please, if you get a chance, check out the International Training School on Core Correctional Skills, Barcelona, Spain, July of 2021. Back next week with a fresh episode. In the meantime, you may contact the show or reach out to us through our website, theparagongroup.llc.com, for training or presentations as to evidence-based practices and or implementation. And, of course, the topic of desistance from crime. I will leave a link in the episode description to the ParagonGroupLLC.com. If you have questions, feel free to contact the show directly through our email, thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. That's thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. Remember to follow us through our Facebook and Instagram pages at The Criminologist Podcast. New fun images are being added all the time to those feeds. You don't want to miss out. I encourage you to follow the Criminologist Media Group on Twitter at Crim Media Group. There you will find the latest updates and related content for both this podcast and our YouTube channel, The Criminologist. Again, the Twitter handle for the Criminologist Media Group is Crim Media Group. Give us a follow. You can also connect with me, Joseph Arvidsson, on LinkedIn and follow both the Criminologist Podcast and the Paragon Group on our LinkedIn pages. Lastly, if you've not already done so, subscribe to our YouTube channel for additional content as to what you hear here on this podcast. Merchandise is available. Reach out if interested. And if you believe in what we're doing on the show, please spread the word. tell a friend or a coworker or a colleague about us. Ask them to subscribe to both the podcast and our YouTube channel, and do so yourself. And always remember, folks, there's no them, there's only us.
What I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills I've acquired over a very long career.
The Criminologist Podcast is a production of the Paragon Group, LLC. For speaking engagements, interviews, program design, training opportunities, or to contact the host, please visit us at theparagongroup.llc.com. Click on the Contact Us tab in the upper right-hand side of the page. Be sure to give us a 5-star review, and thanks for listening.
The thoughts, statements, and opinions of the host and cast members do not necessarily reflect the views of their employers and are those of the host and cast themselves. Any discussion regarding client statements, behaviors, actions, or crimes are purely fictional and are used only for the purposes of example. Any examples that could be deemed to be related to an actual individual or individuals are incidental.